că e gata și cealaltă are aici. Bună dimineața! Good morning! Everyone have in your conference folder a translation like this, in Romanian and Spanish. Cada unul tiene la carpeta de la conferencia la traducción. Din motive medicale, vă rog să-mi permită să stau jos și să vă urez bine ați venit la conferința pe care o organizăm anual. Este o deosebită onoare și o reală bucurie să vă urez bun venit la conferința internațională Dreptul Muncii și Securității Sociale între tradiție, inovație și justiție socială, care se desfășoară astăzi și mâine aici la Târgoviște. Acest eveniment, organizat de Asociația pentru Studiul Relațiilor Profesionale de Muncă, care este membru a ILERA încă din 2016, a devenit, începând cu anul 2019, un reper important în privința, în peisajul academic și profesional al dreptului muncii. Prima ediție a avut în vedere 100 de ani de la înființarea Organizației Internaționale a Muncii, a fost în 2019, România fiind membru fondator. Conferința noastră reprezintă mai mult decât o simplă reuniune științifică, este un sprijin al dialogului și al schimbului de idei, reflectând asupra unor teme de maximă actualitate. Într-o lume aflată într-o continuă transformare, dreptul muncii și securitatea socială sunt chemate să răspundă unor provocări complexe generate de dinamica pieței muncii, de evoluțiile tehnologice și de necesitatea asigurării echității sociale. Ne onorează prezența dumneavoastră, a specialiștilor, cadrului didactice și cercetătorilor din țară și din străinătate. Participarea colegilor din Spania, Italia, România, dar și din Albania, Serbia, Turcia, Ungaria, dar și din îndepărtată America Latină, conferă aceste manifestări un autentic caracter internațional și interdisciplinar. Sunt convins că dezbaterile din aceste 2 zile vor aduce contribuții valoroase, vor genera noi perspective și vor consolida colaborările academice și profesionale dintre participanți. În același timp, ne bucurăm că acest eveniment oferă oaspeților acestui eveniment oportunitatea de a descoperi frumusețea și istoria orașului nostru Târgoviște, fostă capitală domnească, un loc încărcat de tradiție și identitate culturală. Vă doresc tuturor o conferință fructuoasă, inspirație în dezbateri și experiențele să fie cât mai memorabile, atât pe plan profesional cât și personal. Declar deschise lucrările conferinței internaționale Dreptul muncii și securității sociale între tradiție, inovație și echitate socială. Vă mulțumesc încă o dată că ați venit. Acum, conform programului, o să rog pe doamna profesor Carmen Di Carluccio, de la Universitatea din Campania, Italia, din partea partenerului nostru, să ne adreseze cuvântul. Para partenero es la señora Carmen Di Carluccio. Adelante.
Okay. It's a pleasure and an honor to bring the institutional greeting of the Department of Law of the University of Campania Luigi Vanvitelli to this international conference. I would like to thank the Association for the Study of Professional Labor Relations for the invitation and for the scientific commitment that made this possible, together with the partner universities involved. I warmly thank Professor Danton for welcoming me as an honorary member of the association and for a long time friendship. This conference addresses themes that are central to contemporary labor law, the transformation of work, the challenges posed by technological innovation, and the needs to ensure fairness, dignity, and social justice in increasingly complex labor markets. These are not only academic questions, there are structural use for our societies, and they require interdisciplinary dialogue and international cooperation, exactly the kind of dialogue that this conference promotes. In this spirit, I am particularly pleased to highlight the collaboration established between our department and the Association for the Study of Professional Labor Relations. This partnership is framed within the research project Spartacus, which investigates how innovation and public policies shape employment dynamics, distributive outcomes, and territorial disparities, with a specific focus on Italy and the south of the Italy. The convention we are seeing opens the structured space for joint research, comparative analysis, dissemination, and third mission activities on the topic of shared scientific relevance. The organization of work and the quality of employment in health service, the social sustainability of a product process, the protection of vulnerable groups, the impact of technological innovation on organization model and labor relations. Our collaboration is designed to be concrete and generative. The organization of this conference represented the first major joint initiative. We see this as a beginning of a long-term scientific partnership capable of contributing to a deeper understanding of labor transformation and to development of policy tools to promote inclusion, sustainability, and justice. I wish all participants fruitful discussions and a stimulating exchange of ideas. I'm confident that the reflections emerging from this conference will enrich our common research agenda and strengthen the key between our institutions. Thank you, and I wish you all an excellent conference.
Profesor Carmen Di Carluccio, de Universitatea de Campania, Italia. În continuare, o să începem întâlnirea propriu-zise și o invit în calitate de moderator alături de mine pe doamna profesor Ljublinka Kovacevic de la Universitatea din Belgrad, care ne dă acolo dreptul muncii. Și pentru a face o trecere între doi profesori plecați a universităților noastre din Balcani, o să rog pe doamna profesor Ana Claudia Marcă și de la Universitatea București, reputată specialistă în dreptul muncii și securității sociale, să ne prezinte comunicarea.
Mulțumesc! Hristos a înviat, înainte de orice, bună dimineața! Vă rog să-mi permiteți în deschidere să adresez sincere mulțumiri organizatorilor pentru invitație și pentru cadrul academic prestigios în care se desfășoară acest dialog juridic internacional. Permítanme, en primer lugar, dirigir un respetuoso y distinguido saludo a los honorables colegas y representantes de la comunidad jurídica internacional, provenientes de Albania, Argentina, Brasil, Italia, España, Hungría, México, Serbia y Turquía, expresándolos al mismo tiempo mis más cordiales saludos y bienvenida a la Ciudadela del Trono de Târgoviște, un espacio de profunda relevancia histórica que acoge y enmarca los debates académicos y científicos de la presente conferencia pública. Distinguished Professor Kovacek, esteemed Professor Zop, honorable members of the panel, and most distinguished members of the audience. Before starting the timer, allow me to convey my deepest appreciation for the exceptional honor of being invited to participate in this panel, and also for the confidence entrusted to me to formally inaugurate its proceeding. And now you can start to count my minutes. And I will start with a motto. Due to the respect to our guests, I will do my presentation into English. As work becomes digital, European labor law is confronted with its most demanding test of adaptability. Against this background, I will briefly address 4 interconnected issues. The first one, the digitalization of work and the resulting fragmentation of legal protection. The second one, the still uncertain legal status of platform workers. The third one, the partial response offered by the Directive 2831 from 2024. And the last one, the persistent lack of transparency in algorithmic decision making. I will conclude by outlining targeted public policy measures, which in my view could strengthen the capacity of EU labor law to navigate the digital transition. Every era of human development witnesses these moments when evolution takes a leap, usually forward, that prepares the transition to what will become a new epoch. Gutenberg's printing press is symbolic in this respect. Likewise, the steam engine, the use of electricity, and its impact on means of communication. And closer to our time, the emergence of the internet, which has led prospects both fascinating and frightening of the Internet of Things. And of course, the most recent creations of the human mind, the digitalization and the artificial intelligence. The list of examples is far to be exhaustive. Moreover, each of these moments may also be regarded as a source of crisis, insofar as the respective discoveries and inventions have also generated leaps backwards through their disruptive, even destructive use. All of them, however, share a common denomination: their impact on the society and, of course, implicitly on each of its members. This statement may seem a commonplace. However, if we ponder upon it, we notice that the impact in question is highly visible and significant due to its consequences as they ripple through the defining activity of human existence, namely work. And here is the binomial expressed by the title of the remarks that I submit for your consideration. the relationship between EU labor law and the digitalization of work. The argument is that the digitalization of work has triggered a profound reconfiguration of the traditional legal relationships and an increasingly fragmentation of the protection provided by the European labor law. The expansion of platform-mediated work in sectors such as food delivery, urban transport, on-demand services, or digital microtasks, has led to the emergence of forms of activities situated at the boundary between employment and self-employment. Although these forms of work are often promoted as offering flexibility and autonomy, in practice they are characterized by contractual instability, fluctuating incomes, and a reduced level of social security. A defining element of platform work is the organization of the activity by algorithmic systems rather than by a human employer. It is platforms that decide access to work, applicable tariffs, performance evaluation methods, and in many cases, the criteria of retaining or excluding, even firing workers. This technologically mediated form of control essentially reproduces the functions specific to the traditional employment relationship. What is missing, however, it's the assumption of the correspondent legal responsibilities. Think about ride-hailing platforms. Drivers are formally qualified and classified as independent workers, yet they are subject to strict rules concerning optimal routes, order acceptance, or customer ratings. Courts in several member states have found this degree of control incompatible with genuine independence and have reclassified such relationships as employment relationships. These judicial solutions highlight the limits of formal contractual qualification and demonstrate how digitalization can circumvent traditional mechanisms of legal protection, thereby fragmenting the enforcement of workers' rights. The fragmentation described above adds to a central gap in European labor law, namely the uncertainty regarding the legal status of platform workers. The absence of harmonized criteria for qualifying the legal relationship has triggered different and divergent approaches. In some countries, emphasis has been placed on the formal autonomy of workers who have been treated as independent service providers, even where economic dependence on the platform was evident. In other legal systems, courts have adopted a substantive approach, examining the reality of the employment relationship beyond contractual labels. This diversity of solutions has led to a situation in which workers operating under similar conditions benefit from different levels of protection depending on the member states where they work. Example, in 2021, Spain, for instance, adopted the so-called Riders Law, which presumptively classifies delivery platform couriers as employees, anticipating the solution later enshrined by the European legislation. This intervention expanded social protection and significantly reduced disputes regarding workers' rights and legal status. In Italy, courts recognize the existence of subordinate or para-subordinate employment relationships in the case of platform couriers, based on the algorithmic organization of the work. This contributed to shaping a functional interpretation of subordination, consistent with European public policy objectives on workers' protection. Against the backdrop of digital transition, another structural gap in European labor law concerns the insufficient regulation of algorithmic management. These systems influence essential aspects of work, such as tasks allocation, dynamic remuneration, or account suspension. The problem is that workers are often deprived of clear information about how algorithms operate and lack effective mechanisms to challenge automated decisions. A frequent example is the automatic deactivation of worker accounts based on algorithmic scores following customer complaints or an insufficient number of accepted orders, or in the absence of a transparent procedure. Such decisions are perceived as arbitrary and may lead to immediate loss of income. The transparency deficit limits workers' right to defense and creates a structural imbalance of power that cannot be remedied by traditional labor law instruments that are designed in principle for interpersonal rather than algorithmic relations. The directive on improving working conditions in platform works is an important step in adapting the EU labor legislation to the realities of the digital economy. The first and most important public policy priority of it was to clarify and harmonize the criteria for qualifying the employment relationships in the context of digital platform work. The directive addresses also the issue by establishing a presumption of an employment relationship when the platform exercises control and direction, thereby shifting the burden of proof onto platforms. From a public policy perspective, the priority is not merely the formal transposition of this presumption, but to ensure the effective and uniform implementation at national level, including by strengthening the capacity of labor authorities and courts to assess the reality of the legal relationship. The directive also sets minimum rules on algorithmic transparency, human oversight of automated decisions, and data protection for workers. These provisions aim to limit the negative effects of algorithmic management and restore a degree of balance between platforms and workers. A second major public priority concerns the regulation of algorithmic management of work. European public policies must seek to establish clear principles of transparency so that the use of artificial intelligence does not lead to indirect forms of discrimination or arbitrariness. The automatic deactivation of worker accounts in the ride-hailing example or delivery sectors based on algorithmic scores has been frequently challenged before national courts, highlighting the lack of a right to explanation and meaningful redress. In Netherlands, for instance, data protection authorities have challenged excessive algorithmic monitoring of platform workers, stressing the need to correlate artificial intelligence regulation with labor law. A third essential public policy priority was adapting social protection systems to the reality of digital and atypical work. Classical social security structures that are based on continuous employment and stable income do not adequately cover the situation of platform workers. Some member states, for example, have introduced proportional contribution mechanisms for workers with fluctuating incomes, facilitating access to health insurance and pensions. Another example, in France, platforms have been encouraged through public policies to contribute to the financing of social protection systems for self-employed workers, including lifelong learning, therefore acknowledging the need for skills adaptation in a dynamic digital economy. A final public priority concerns the strengthening of social dialogue under conditions of digital economic development. The fragmentation of work and of the classification of workers as self-employed limit their access to traditional collective bargaining mechanisms, exacerbating power asymmetries vis-à-vis platforms. For example, the European initiatives allowing collective bargaining by self-employed workers without the risk of being classified as anti-competitive practices reflect a paradigm shift in EU public policies. Another example, in some member states, forms of organization of platform workers have emerged, such as professional associations or hybrid structures that participate in consultation with public authorities. This demonstrates that a part of this social dialogue was adapted to the digital economy. In conclusion, the digital transition of work does not render EU labor law obsolete. It confronts it with a decisive moment of recalibration. The real challenge is not technological innovation itself, but the law's capacity to preserve human dignity, accountability, and social protection in an increasingly algorithmic workplace. Whether EU labor law will merely adapt at the margins or reaffirm its normative core will ultimately depend on our